Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sasha Parrish, and I am the staff editor of the Diversity Business Review and the host of the Diversity Business Review podcast. On today's episode, we have with us contributing author and peer review board member of the Diversity Business Review Spring Edition, Dr. Mary Donahue. Let's dive right in. Dr. Mary, thank you for being here. Would you please like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sasha. I'm thrilled to be here and I'm thrilled to be part of the journal. My name is, as you said, Dr. Mary Donahue. I am the CEO of the Digital Wellness Center. I am also a digital psychologist that focuses on the effects of technology on you, your personality, and your brain. I have been working in this field since I began my dissertation way back in 2005, and when I graduated in 2009, my focus was on mentoring. The reason I chose mentoring was because my client at the time, Molson Coors, was looking how to extend their leadership training and how to extrapolate data from mentoring and apply it to moving people through their high team member training at the time. So we began to look at the idea of mentoring as training for people who weren't necessarily flagged by HR as, top talent, any of those things, but they were people that managers felt had a significant amount of talent. And that's how mentoring really started. And the results were incredible. We went on to run the program specifically with American Airlines. We tried with Kaiser Permanente. We worked with TD Bank, Bank of Montreal, RBH. And what we found, Sasha, was fascinating. When the mentors had the opportunity to mentor, as a mentor, they successfully negotiated more raises, the ability to grow within the organization. The mentees, I believe it was 78% of the time, so 7 out of 10 of every mentee, that was involved in the program, moved forward in their career if they chose to, received more money, and or moved to a different division within the organization.
Oh, wow.
Those are pretty startling facts.
Yeah.
And companies started building this into their high performance training, their top talent training. What was actually fascinating was relationships started developing. So we, in particular with Walmart, Mike Camp, who is really a super mentor, he's used the program at least 12 times. What we see with his mentor is not just that they're exceeding their original goals within the program, because the program has goals, it has measurement, it has data collection, both quantitative and qualitative. It's a system designed for human relations. But we see them extending the mentoring branch to other members of their team. And for example, Calvin is someone up here that is doing an amazing job, Calvin Hardy. And I was lucky enough that your CEO, way back in 2013, was kind enough to publish the first journal account of our success at Walmart. And that was transformational for Mike, for Calvin, and for myself. The article that's in the current edition of the journal describes a situation in COVID, specifically dealing with women managers and women who wanted to move into a management position. But the rules changed during COVID for people. The traditional training methodologies, for example, you just walk into somebody's office, you observe someone dealing with a team. When you're sitting in on meetings, you can just quietly pull someone aside afterwards. It's very natural leadership breaks in terms of understanding how someone works. they stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, I'm not sure if you experienced this, Sasha, but during COVID, women found themselves adding on responsibilities. For example, responsibilities for caring for their parents, caring for their grandparents, caring for children, caring for self, caring for family. And
Yes.
that compounded the difficulties. So that's the genesis, a long genesis of how this article started. And the article is based on quantitative and qualitative data gathered from pre-COVID to post-COVID. And it was looking at a specific group of women who were working in a utilities firm and who wanted to move forward in their careers and take the opportunities that were being offered to them by this avant-garde organization, but just needed the experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Mary. That was a great summary and
Thank you.
introduction to this article. It's a brilliant article, by the way. I wanted to ask, when you were writing this, what did you really hope for readers to get out of this? Either people who are looking for mentor or mentoring, or companies who are thinking about implementing mentoring programs. What were your kind of goals when you were writing for the audience?
My overall goal, and what I continue to advocate for all organizations, is that mentoring has to be systematized. It has to be measured, and it has to work against productivity numbers and measurements. And we actually use Deming, Dr. Edward Deming's measurements for productivity in our system. And the reason I say that is mentoring needs to be equalized. What we look at, if you look at any of our literature and studies on diverse groups, including women, is they don't receive the same experience as, say, for example, a 40-year-old white male.
Right.
And that's not a purposeful problem. Women process information in terms of leadership very differently because they're taught very differently about leadership. And so what we do when we systematize mentoring and we systematize the experience of mentoring is we create equal access for mentoring. And that's what makes mentoring successful. The other is build our mentoring system, or build a mentoring system into your already existing training programs, both for your top talent, for your high performing talent, and also for your managers. Lastly, build it in a post-COVID world, build systematized mentoring into your orientations for new staff, because we're not creating a culture online for our future high-performing staff. We're just saying, here, attend some Zoom meetings, here's our structure, but they're not able to see the fluidity of conversation that we saw when we were in person. And that was the objective of the article, to show how successful mentoring was at reducing the fear of working with a strange group when a new, in this case, woman manager came onto the scene, into a culture, but also how it reduced the fear of a recruit, knowing that, oh my gosh, they already have a pre-existing mentoring program. This is great. I can look at this mentoring program. I can have a mentor. I can meet someone who helps me through my career.
Yes. I love that. I wanted to ask you, it's been a moment since you wrote this article. This was for our last issue. It's been some time, so I wanted to ask if, since you wrote it, you've come across any new data that maybe changed your opinion or might have provoked you to potentially expand on your research or offered new insights in any way, especially since that was very much, we were very much in the midst of COVID during the time when you were writing, and now we're starting to come out of the other side. Do you think anything has changed now that we're starting to move towards being in a post-pandemic sort of society?
I do. I think the research that's coming out now on the relationship between our relationships with other people and
Yes.
our mental health is really incredibly important as we relate to mentoring. And mentoring is actually someone who helps you negotiate your career. And
Right.
it's a huge responsibility for a mentor. But that's what we were meant to do as humans. We weren't meant to sit at our desk, be on Zoom calls, and answer emails.
Mhm.
Really and truly, Carl Jung demonstrated, and his research is again coming to the forefront, which I think is awesome,
Yes.
that we need relationships, and relationships are what move us forward in organizations. So if we look at, let's put this in context of Calvin Hardy and Mike Camp, because Walmart gave me permission to talk about that relationship.
Okay.
Excuse me. Calvin was thinking of leaving Walmart, and Walmart had spent a ton of money to recruit Calvin. Calvin is one of those dream people that you're just like, oh my gosh, I would love to have you on my team. But Calvin didn't see anyone that looked like him within the leadership of the organization.
Mm.
Calvin could identify with the culture of the organization. Calvin had been trained totally different. For example, Calvin writes very thoughtful emails. He takes time to write thoughtful emails. And in Walmart, that's fantastic, but you need to acknowledge that you received the emails. So when he wasn't doing that, his manager was saying, he's a dud, he's not on top of things, he's too slow. So you see how that really can create a problem within a culture.
Yes.
Mike Camp was asked by Calvin's manager to take this mentoring program on, and they used the Donahue mentoring system, the DMS. And what happened was, within the program, the mentor picks 3 goals. And so when I talk about the literature that's coming forward on goal setting, human relationships, and understanding your neurocycles as it relates to what's going on Zoom, on Teams, on any of these virtual platforms, is incredibly important to understand in the relationship. Because instead of just stepping back, both Mike and Calvin made a point, being in the same city, of meeting with each other. And then Mike made a point of connecting Calvin with people in leadership that reflected Calvin. And what happened is, all these years later, how many years is that? 10. Calvin is thriving in the organization. He's brought in more new employees. Walmart's cost per hire has dropped for that division. Everyone is high performing. Mike and Calvin still have a relationship. Calvin has become a mentor himself. What does that demonstrate? It talks about the importance of the relationship between Mike and Calvin, who, by the way, if you look on LinkedIn, are still best buds and still celebrate each other.
Oh, that's lovely.
So I think any research that's starting to come out and talk about how technology can help our relationships is incredibly important. But I also think relationships themselves at work have been ignored. And we need to go back to the value of relationships and building relationships.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And I think that mentoring is, like you said, such a powerful tool and just great to create those relationships in the workplace because look at how it helps us grow and expand. Thank you so much,
Mm-hmm.
Mary, for expanding on this topic, introducing us to the power of mentoring circles for everyone. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I'd like to thank you for doing the podcast.
Thank you.
Everyone is welcome to try out the Donahue mentoring system. We have made it very simple, and we've really lowered the cost by using AI.
Oh, wow.
So to reach out. Happy to talk to you about that later, and how our patterns work. And just really excited that you're doing this, Sasha. Thank you for taking this on. I know it's above and beyond your responsibility. Honor you and Pam for jumping in and using this platform.
Oh, no, I love it. I'm really happy you were able to come on today. Thank you so much for joining us. To our listeners, you can access Mary's full article on the Diversity Business Review website, diversitybusinessreview.com, or in the Diversity Business Review Spring Edition alongside several of our other amazing contributors. Thank you, Dr. Mary.
Thank you, Sasha. Have a wonderful day.
You too.